R-E-A-L-I-T-Y. 7 letters. Reality. What is real? Today we're going to talk about 3 things. First, we're going to talk about reality, the perception of reality. Then we're going to talk about reality versus fantasy. And lastly, we're going to have a call for you to live in reality. First, perception. Perception is a strong word. What do you think of when I say reality? What's the first thing that pops into your mind? Into my mind comes truth, heartbreak. Reality is known to hit people hard. Reality is known to hurt people. Reality can hurt you. But why do we think of these things? Why is reality such a negative term? What makes reality so condescension to our brains, to our minds? Why is it something that we think of as negative instead of positive? Because if it's reality, what is real? Do we live in a negative, real world, or do we live in a positive, real world? We live in our own worlds. Now, I'd like to talk about the opposite of reality, fantasy, and compare the two. I've talked a little bit about reality, things that are real, but fantasy is the opposite of reality. So if it's the opposite of that negative term that we think right away, so the first thing you think of when you think of fantasy is probably good thoughts. In all honesty, is good thoughts. In a fantasy, you control your fantasy. You control what's going on. In today's world, there's so much that we get caught up in, such as social media, apps like Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook. They all give you a virtual reality, which is almost the same as a fantasy. But we're not going to get into that. I'll continue with that virtual reality term, though, as we talk about fantasy and how we see ourselves today. Because of these social media apps, we as humans have been given the opportunity to shape our reality. We've been able to give ourselves an opportunity to control how other people look at us through our social media, which is fantasy. Not all of it's fantasy, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that social media and those apps are wrong. I'm not necessarily saying that they're not real. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that there is an air to them that allow people to get caught up in things that aren't real. And that's where I'd say we get caught up in the most right now, is why reality is such a negative term, is because we've been controlling something that's not reality for so long as humans. All that aside, I'm here to tell you the truth about reality, and that is that we live in a reality. We don't live in social media. We don't live in our Facebook account. We don't live in our Instagram account. We don't live in pictures. We live in the moment. And that's what we need to do right now, because the world around us is real. And there's this thing going on, touched briefly about the coronavirus, COVID-19. For many people out here in Western America, it wasn't real. It wasn't a reality until it became real. And it became real when we started shutting down our economy, when people started losing their jobs, when people started dying, people that we know, and it's starting to take a real toll and have real effects, and it is reality. But I'd like to call you to not live in that social media, not live in that account, not live in that fantasy, because that's not where you're going to make a difference. You're going to make a difference right here in reality. So, next time you think about reality, think of something positive. Think of something that you can do to make a difference.